We begin part four with Sargent returning to London in 1889 and engaging in a series of paintings in and around the theater. This is Ellen Terry as Lady Macbeth. We have another version from this, I believe, next, and then we have another piece from the theater as well. And again, these are really kind of enjoyable to view because of the rich pageantry of the costumes. And again, as I mentioned before, Sargent would be someone who would have clothing available for his portraiture. So again, this rich ornamental pattern is not something that's completely lost or not seen before in some of Sargent's work. But again, more so over here, we need to kind of put into perspective that as Sargent, as the years kind of progress here, we have more and more of his reputation kind of growing. And again, at this point, he's actually an international star. Literally, I mean, and this is something, a term we use in the contemporary quite a bit, but from this time period, that's really remarkable that he has, again, a reputation built in America as well as one built in London and of course one in Paris as well. So he is one of the first truly recognized artists across the coast between Europe and America, and again, that connection is from his portraiture work. So, as we continue to look at his work, however, it becomes he begins to work less and less on these portraits. Again, these were primarily done as a measure. This almost looks like it belongs in a Manet lecture rather than one from Sargent. But again, this idea of the theater and the costume and all of this wonderful aspects is kind of what we see Sargent exploring. And as I was saying, as we see his continuation of his career, as we kind of get on to this last part, one of the things we do kind of see is less and less portrait work and more vacation work and more work settled towards, I think, what he wants to do rather than earning a living. I mean, he charged quite a bit for his portraits, and he would be able to do several in 1 year. So he was never really wanting for money towards the end of his life. He did very well. One of my favorite portraits that he did towards the end of his portraiture career is the Lady Agnew of Lochna portrait from 1893. Very, very wonderful portrait. I just love the way she's looking at us. And again, this is another one of these wonderful paintings where we have this full concept of a wonderful image of a portrait, but as we move away, we become a little bit more impressionistic in tone, especially if we look kind of down at the bottom of her dress. But it's also interesting because so much of her body is thrust forward in this with her legs and her knees while her body is recessed back into this chair. This is kind of a difficult thing, but yet at the same time we see her face almost even with the canvas plane, almost this optical trick, if you will. Another portrait we have towards the end of his portrait career is Mrs. Hugh Hammersley. From my understanding, Mrs. Hugh Hammersley was a socialite of extraordinary measure from her time. Simply, if anyone was anyone, they knew Mrs. Hugh Hammersley, and this is a wonderful painting depicting her. And again, this red, it's not quite this red that we would think of as being something associated with carnality, but rather this almost joyful pink of almost a cotton candy or bubblegum kind of nature that is more of a fun kind of red rather than a red that you would associate with lust or that type of thing. Again, when we look at the complexity of this, we have really what we find in a lot of the portraits: the person, a nice outfit, and some nice furniture. Another series of work he does in this last part of his career is these series of portraits he does of Robert Louis Stevenson, and I really do love these because you really do kind of get this image into the characterness of Robert Louis Stevenson as much as anything. Again, this is one of these compositions where at first it looks very much out of balance because he's so far over to the edge. You can almost see him pacing back and forth, twiddling his fingers on his face. But again, when we look on the right and how he's balanced it out with actual pictures and frames and that type of thing, another wonderful use of asymmetrical balance by the artist Sargent. But going back to Stevenson again, what a nervous person he seems just from this image, I again another wonderful portrait of a sitting person we see, and we're lucky enough that we have reached the age where we can have photography of some of these individuals as well. So you can just by comparison see the likeness between Stevenson and the portrait, and again, it's so amazing because there's so much energy that seems to be coming out of this image of the face and this very, very thick, fuzzy carpet that we see on the ground, almost like a bearskin rug, if you will. But yet we still very much get this likeness of the individual, even if it is a little bit farther removed from the strict versions of portraiture that we've kind of seen before. Again, really towards the end of his career, he has become a master of his craft. A wonderful image, self-portrait within his studio, again, kind of seeing all the different aspects of what we would have. And as I have written here, 1900, more traveling with his friends and enjoying life and less portraiture work. And then by 1907, he does completely close his portrait studio. And again, this is one of these remarkable stories in my mind where again, you see this person kind of reaching what we would think of as the senior moments of their life, and rather than just retiring and completely shutting down, he continues to work. And as he travels during this period, we see some amazing pieces of art, and again, he's going to locations that are very, very interesting and sometimes very remote. The official White House portrait of President Theodore Roosevelt is quite a story. The two had a very difficult time with each other. Theodore Roosevelt is not a person who would sit still for any amount of time, and from my understanding, there was quite a bit of bickering that even led to an argument. And right as they were having this argument, Sargent essentially looked at him standing there and said, "Perfect, just hold that portrait at this moment, and this is where I will paint you." So the official White House portrait of President Roosevelt is painted by John Singer Sargent. Again, this shows you the renown of the artist. But again, when we think of the lineage of presidential portraits, we do find Sargent in with that group. And so we have between 1915 and 1917 a return to America. And this is really an amazing fun time because, again, we get some of these portraits, again, of some of the people that if you are an American, you know so well by name. And we get these kind of interesting likenesses. John D. Rockefeller, a name synonymous with America and capitalism and the idea of industry. And here we see him as this older person kind of looking off as a visionary. But again, we get this kind of almost feeble posturing from him where, again, at this later point in his life, Rockefeller not necessarily being this stout individual. This is a great story. The presidential portrait, or the President Woodrow Wilson, is actually in the National Gallery of Ireland. And as the story goes, there was this individual that kind of worked out this thing with Sargent where he would essentially get a painting done by him, by Sargent, and then he would pay the money over to the Red Cross. Well, this individual actually dies on the Lusitania, if you're familiar with that ship. And then what occurs is his estate actually goes to the National Gallery of Ireland, and then Ireland's gallery actually pays the money to the Red Cross and then has Sargent paint an image of Woodrow Wilson. I hope you followed all of that. But again, it's a very interesting story. See, now this is the point in his life I find very interesting and enjoyable, and this is this last journey that we have him going through America. And again, this is the America of the 1900s, if you will, 1915, 1916, and he's traveling to very remote locations. I believe this is a painting that he actually did while he was in Montana. It wasn't just that he came to America to do another series of work, but he actually went through and explored America and went to a lot of parts of America while he was here, his travels were such that a lot of people who live in the country now probably didn't travel as much as Sargent did when he was here around 1916. And just to give you an idea, one of my favorite little watercolors, obviously down when he was in Florida, the muddy alligators. Again, how can you not fall in love with the idea of him painting these alligators while he's in Florida? Again, it must be having a wonderful time journeying with his friends and exploring America. And again, when we think about America at this time period, not all of America is as completely settled as we think. So a lot of this is exploration in back countries and things of this nature. But again, if you look at his later watercolors, it's this wonderful series of paintings that he did as he was traveling through America, viewing different sites that he was seeing as he was exploring the country that he really claims as his birth. Again, something like this, obviously from Florida, really this interesting perspective into America from this time period that we really, again, in terms of art, very playful and very imaginative and also very, very personal. We're very lucky in America that we have actually secured two of the larger collections of his watercolors work. So in addition to exploring America, a lot of the watercolor work that we associate with Sargent is located in the United States of America. So, but again, we kind of are moving towards the end of his life here, and he does a lot within America, within New York, to kind of establish leagues and different groups of the arts. Again, he has an international reputation, so this kind of proceeds for him. He does return to England, and during the war he is commissioned to do some paintings, and this one's always very gripping to me, Gassed, and again, we think of chemical warfare from this time period. These people have all been blinded by chemical gas warfare, in addition to this heap of humanity that we have in the front, and we're not sure, again, if we're looking at people who are alive or dead, and it's a very haunting and chilling image from Sargent, and I imagine it'd be very hard not to be in some way taken by the war and the events, as we see from other artists at the time painting in this during this time period. But again, and again, as we move towards the end of his life, he starts to do more murals and larger paintings. He returns to America again towards the very end of his life. He actually dies, I believe, in 1925 in England. But this is a wonderful little image to kind of finish out our conversation. Again, in Maine, very much an American kind of image. Nice people relaxing on a porch, and the wonderful thing about this image is you can see the three women are all very busy at an activity, and the man's not doing anything but laying there. And again, this beautiful colonnade stretching off into the distance. But I imagine that this is where we would find Sargent towards the end of his life. A wonderful career, a wonderful person, and an absolutely amazing artist.